As far as creating the right culture, I think it's really important you highlight two key things, and the first of which being purpose. So a reason to come in and do your role that transcends just the role of a recruiter. And whilst I absolutely love what we do, we certainly live in a day and age where when you go on social media, everyone's telling you to quit your job and follow your dreams. Now, as an employer, if you can't create a culture, that staff member can see a greater vision than just doing their job from a day-to-day perspective. It's going to be really, really difficult to retain that talent and get them excited as well. These are incredibly difficult times to be, an employee in any capacity from a mental health perspective. So if they're not coming to work empowered, excited, and purposeful, then they're really going to struggle. Now, the second key point I would make around culture is a culture of accepting mistakes, especially for junior staff. And I guess I'm going to speak from my own lens. In our business, there is a real gap, I guess, between the really junior staff and the really senior staff. Now, if you're a junior staff member and all you ever see is arguably what you would like to think is recruitment best practice, you might reflect on yourself and say, why am I not like that? So if you don't create a culture where it's okay to make mistakes, and even as a leader, you don't tell your junior team about the mistakes you make and how it's actually okay, they're really going to struggle from a comparison perspective. So those are kind of two key things. Did I answer that one? It's really funny when I get asked this question, because I remember how I was trained in recruitment. My first recruitment role, they gave me a stack of resumes about this big, and they told me to go through and grade them from A to C, and that was my entire training. So I spent like 2 days going through 100 resumes, probably not the best, but I did look to your Hayes, your Randstad as absolutely best in class, in my opinion, as to the kind of structure you want to follow from a training perspective. There's a reason why they're multi-billion-dollar companies. Now, I don't have a multi-billion-dollar budget, unfortunately, but I am a huge fan of a lovely lady called Laura at Hopes Consult. So funnily enough, double plug for Laura. I was well aware of the need for structured training for junior staff members, where potentially as a small business owner, I didn't have the time to be running through 2 hours a day. So what Laura actually offers is a fully comprehensive training program from start to finish, where I know that, okay, no matter what happens at the end of this training program over a 12 week, it can be anywhere from 12 weeks to 2 weeks condensed. They would have gone through all the core fundamentals, and it's my job to really polish that up and obviously apply it to the Kona way. Webinars are another huge one, but I believe Seek and LinkedIn are two of the best as far as really allowing staff to learn at their own pace. We have a huge culture in the business around Seek webinars. At least once a month, I like to have the staff on at least one, and then we'll usually spend some time on a weekly wrap just talking through what we've learned that week. The other thing I'd probably touch on as far as more formalized training is industry specific as well. So if you're in a niche like I am in insurance, we will pay for our staff to take industry specific courses or qualifications. Each staff member has a $7,500 kitty per year to invest in whatever training they see fit or we potentially see fit, and that really empowers them to be self-reflective and accountable for places and development that they need. The last point I'll make on this is actually, as a leader, your training doesn't start and finish at a classroom. When your team is calling you with a challenge, it's not enough to explain what to do. It's explaining why as well. So really starting to unpeel that onion as to why you're making certain decisions or you're making certain adjustments in their process, and obviously leading on data analytics there as a non-KPI business is really important as well. This was it. This is all I've been waiting for. We're a remote business, which is awesome, right? So we do have offices in each state, but the staff are pretty much siloed. So all of the onboarding we've done since launching has been remote based. What I found in my experience, structure is everything. So you're checking in the morning, so you're running a quick 15, 25, 30-minute phone call to say, hey, here's how your day's gonna look. And at the end of the day, you've got another meeting to kind of go through and reflect on what you've done. Now, in between that, we have a culture at Kona, no phone calls, just FaceTime. When you're a remote workforce, if you don't spend that time seeing your staff, you're going to really struggle to build culture. So that's something we really pride ourselves on, is no phone calls just FaceTimes. So you are building that, and you're also being able to have these conversations and read expressions. So if you're taking a phone call or a text message, an email, extremely one-dimensional unless you're fantastic at reading tonality. So that FaceTime is always super important. Other things I'd probably touch on as well is probably just around going back to my cultural point. So if you foster an environment where mistakes are allowed to be made and accepted, then your staff won't have an issue, remote or otherwise, talking to you about them. Now, if you don't create that kind of environment, in an office, you can hear them make a mistake. Hey, you need to tweak this, you need to change that. When you're remote, you really need to entrust and empower your staff to be able to talk to you about that stuff. So this goes back to your vulnerability as a leader. And then after that, you're then leaning on data and analytics. So for the first month, you're really leaning on fostering a culture, a safe space. I know that's kind of a millennial buzzword nowadays, to be able to talk about it. And then after that, you're leaning on data as a recruitment leader, understanding the numbers, and then being able to provide feedback. If they haven't necessarily came to the table and said, hey, this is where I'm falling over, you'll be able to see it in the data. So those are kind of my key tips there. It's so exciting to say we're a no KPI business, right? But if you don't lean on data analytics and targets, you're just a bunch of individuals just doing stuff, just being busy for the sake of being busy. So the way I would say we look to do this is to look at the individual consultant in their specific field. I think, okay, you recruit in this industry, but I know is extremely candidate short. So if I give you the same targets, or I have the same expectations in my head of you as I do as your colleague in a more candidate rich market, I'm going to create some sort of imbalance in the business. So this is where, as a leader, if you're in a small business, you just want to apply your industry expertise in understanding what is reasonable, a reasonable expectation. Now, what we like to do as well is once that first month is done, or that first real week of them doing the role 360 from start to finish, you're going to start to understand what their pace is, how much work are they kind of getting done per week, and then you can make adjustments around that. Look, if they're meeting 5 candidates a week and they are placing all 5, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I think sometimes leaders have a tendency to go, oh, we just need to set KPIs for the sake of KPIs. But actually, you want to lean on the data to see what they do well and not so well. So stay away from blanket KPIs if you're a smaller business. Look, like I said, this becomes more difficult as you scale. But for us, we are small enough that I can empower my staff to work at their pace and make adjustments as we see fit, comparative to a blanket KPI. Just to touch on my personal experience. So I'm 25 at the moment, but I got into recruitment when I was 18 years old. And by far the biggest challenge I had was joining companies and doing a great job, but not exactly knowing where the parameters were set as far as my next step. I was always felt like I was held back from a potential promotion due to my age, potentially in some capacity. And if we're talking about Gen Z or millennials and so on, this is a real thing. So the first thing I did actually when I launched Kona was the progression pathway, the Kona progression pathway. This is a completely transparent document, I guess, or slideshow that we send to every staff member, and that will outline every single criteria you need to hit in order to gain promotion. If you do this, you will get this. And I think that's the only way you can really empower your staff. The clearer that progression pathway, the easier it is to sell the purpose as well, to sell it to the person. So when you're aligning expectations, number one, once again, going back to mistakes are okay. Sometimes work is just work. Like, we're not here saving turtles. Like, sometimes it's going to be really, really difficult and not fun at all. And that's okay. And I think, if you don't want to set KPIs, which we don't at Kona, we do set team goals. So on a Monday morning, we go through, everyone sets 3 goals for the week. And they kind of are KPIs, let's be honest, but they're self-set KPIs, because the worst thing you can be given is KPIs that aren't relevant to your desk. So they're self-set, and on Thursday afternoon, you then have to talk to the team as to whether or not you've hit them, which is hilarious, especially if you're the MD and you never hit your goals. You set an awful example for everyone, but it's a great way of building accountability and managing expectations as well. So when you're on those calls, they're saying, oh, I'm not getting where I need to get to, or I'm not being as great as I want to be, but are you hitting your goals? Are you doing the key fundamentals of your role in order to deliver success? So yeah, we absolutely, we really enjoy that format as well.